Had the defence not become aware of it through other avenues? And is it appropriate that access to and decisions about disclosure of key evidence should exclusively be in the hands of a prosecution whose primary function is to secure convictions? Let me be clear about this. My clients were not guilty. They did not agree to join in any plan to occupy the power station. The evidence of Peace and Kennedy presumably confirmed this. Yet that evidence, had it been kept secret, could have led to a miscarriage of justice. Serious questions must be asked relating to the whole policing of this protest, from the use of undercover police officers to the use of expensive and legally questionable mass preemptive arrests of protesters, to the use of pre-charge, unaccountable bail conditions, to the seemingly arbitrary nature by which the 114 initially arrested were reduced to the final 26 who were eventually charged. In conclusion, the police need to answer some serious questions about their conduct relating to peaceful protesters generally.
Mr. Schwarz, Mark Worthington with BBC News. You mentioned there you want some serious questions answered. If we focus for a moment on the role of Mark Kennedy, the undercover officer, can you give us some specific questions and concerns that you have about his role in this case?
Yes. Cost, how much does it cost? Proportionality, is it reasonable to incur hundreds of thousands of pounds of costs to infiltrate peaceful, accountable, open, democratic protesters who are concerned about the very pressing issue, climate change? These are key questions about the budget and the policing and the accountability of the police, particularly when the police seem to be unhappy about answering any questions about their policy generally on undercover police officers and peaceful protesters.
And there's been much speculation about the role of Mark Kennedy, or indeed Mark Stone as he was known, and he was offered to assist the defence. Can you be more specific on your contact with him and what he had been prepared to say in court?
He was willing to speak to me with a view to assisting the defence. We took the issues to the prosecution in autumn of last year and asked them for information about his involvement, but this was news to me. And we've seen the result of that 2 working days before the trial. The prosecution dropped the case. I think that speaks for itself.
And of course there are some protesters involved in the same planning who have been found guilty. What's your view now on how those prosecutions stand and whether there'll be any appeal?
I can't comment now because this is fast-moving news. However, there are concerns about the whole police of this operation, which 114 peaceful protesters were arrested and kept on pre-charge bail conditions for months on end, without any proper accountability to senior police officers or to the court. And this is a serious attack on peaceful, accountable protests on issues of public and pressing importance like climate change.
And just to sum up, in your experience then, how would you say that this sits? You seem fairly outraged, but sum up for us from your professional perspective how you think this has been handled.
It's unsurprising but of deep concern. One expects there to be undercover police on serious operations to investigate serious crime, but this was quite the opposite. This is civil disobedience which has a long history in this country and should be protected rather than prosecuted.
Do you think this will have any consequences for any other possible cases in the past involving this particular PC?
Well, this is part of the inquiry that the police ought to be conducting. They ought to be examining all of their files and seeing exactly what Mark Stone Kennedy's role was in past cases and prosecutions, and seeing whether they ought to be disclosing to convicted defendants whether there are grounds for appeal. And this is part of the mischief that's taking place here, that things are happening behind closed doors that no solicitors or defendants or protesters are aware about. It's unaccountable, and it only happened, it only arose and became known, not through police disclosure to us, but from efforts these campaigners took to uncover Mark Stone. One does wonder what would have happened had that not been known.
You said you've spoken to him. What do you think his motivations were for getting in touch?
I can't speak anymore, and I'd like to leave questions now if I may. I think there may be defendants who may be able, erstwhile defendants who may want to say things, but I get to leave it and take up 2 more questions.
One more question. I mean, there have been suggestions that Mark Stone was involved in organising this protest and acting as an national officer. How concerned are you about that?
Well, the role of any police officer in acting inappropriately, agent provocateur, encouraging criminal offences, taking part in criminal offences, is of the deepest concern. And this, I think, ought to be part of some inquiry that ought to be conducted about Mark Stone specifically and police tactics generally, because this is a murky, unknown area which has only become known not through police volunteering information, quite the opposite, they've shut down this prosecution, but through the persistence and endeavour of peaceful, accountable, democratic protesters. I'll take one more question and leave it.
Do you think he went naked?
It's speculation, but I think he did. I think he was persuaded by the arguments about the pressing nature of climate change and the appropriateness of peaceful, accountable, direct action to tackle it, and civil disobedience to tackle it. I get to leave it there for a minute. Thank you.
A word there as we've heard from the defence solicitor of the campaign, and some of whom we've seen.
Yeah, okay, so
who are about to speak. We will.
yeah, so people want interviews, come here. I guess that's for everyone. Okay, so we're lining people up for interviews now.
We're going to do one-on-ones.
Yeah, just the one-on-ones. Okay. So we've got some defendants from the 6 who are happy to speak on one-on-ones.
Right.
So do people want to just sort of like say who they're from and whether, and then take people off?
Yeah, Lewis Warren-Jones from ITV News.
Okay, so Danny,
I'm happy to stay around for as long as it takes to talk to everybody.
Right.
So look, we're not going. So I'm a bit of a queue.
Say your name first of all, and then.
Yeah.
We're gonna. So can you take my TV off?
Yeah,
We'll do it one at a time. One-on-ones, isn't it? This gentleman's allowed to.